Okay, so when we started Sefer Shmot, we basically started with the whole, to deal with the concept of galut, of exile. And the parasha that we read last week, Parashat Shmot, really deals with the whole concept of the galut, of exile, and also the beginning of Geulah, of redemption. We need to understand that galut of Mitzrayim, the exile of Egypt, is the root of all exiles out there. And there are many different types of exiles and different types of historical time. Mike, can you do me a favor? You make me coffee. Now, as much as we in the Sferot, when we're talking about the Kabbalistic Sferot, that there is Keter, Chokhmah, Binah, then we have Ze'er Anpin, which is a whole compilement of a whole bunch of Sferot together, and then we have Malchut, when Keter is the head, is the Rosh, it's the hidden Sfera, so is in the Galut. So it also is regarding the Galuyot. That's why the Torah deals with Galut Mitzrayim with great details. And the reason why the Torah does it is in order to give us the tools to deal with other type of exile, and especially the exile in which we are at now, and in a way also to understand all the exiles that passed, whether it was Rome or Babel and Babylonian and so on and so forth. Of course, it also gives us the ability to how to look at or to get ready for the Geulah, for the redemption. And if a person understands the root of things, you'll be able to understand all the branches of the tree of which that stems from. So if you understand the processes in which happened in Egypt, you might be able to understand, to identify. It's in a way like patterns. The initial pattern was established in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, and basically we're following similar patterns all the time. So based on your ability to identify that pattern, you'll be able to identify the state in which you are at, and then prepare to the next stage and to be able to, as they did in Mitzrayim, come out of Egypt, the same thing to come out of that. If not, as you know, many people didn't come out of Egypt. They stayed there. So we need to really understand that. It's very important to remember that the main form of exile is not the exile of the body, but the main form of exile is the exile of the mind, what we call in Hebrew da'at. And we know that the word da'at refers to chibur, connection. Chokhmah, Binah, Vadat. Da'at always represents chibur. How do we know that? Because it says, Ve'ha'adam yada et Chava ishto. And Adam knew his wife, Chava, Eve, his wife. Knew means they became one. They united in a physical matter, but they became one. And then Vatelet et Cain. And then she gave birth to Cain. So it refers to something that is of a connection. Da'at always refers to connection. Galut, exile, is a disconnect of, or a spiritual disconnect from God, from Borei Olam. So, and the Geulah is the reconnection with God. So in a way of process of being on the path, becoming secular and going back into the path, being chozer b'tshuva. That's the Geulah, lachzor b'tshuva, chazara b'tshuva, to be a Baal tshuva is like being redeemed. The same thing for a person who converted. He connected to God through a different level, through the Torah mitzvot, so he's now in a way redeemed, he's new. It's thank you Michael. That's a masterful cup of coffee. So, by the way, if any girl wants to have some kind of good cup of coffee, marry Mike. The gematria, the numerical value of da'at, is 474. 474 is also the gematria of Hine Ein Hashem El Yereav. He is God revealing His eyes to those who fear Him. So, as they say, to know Him is to love Him, or to love Him is to know Him. It's basically like this. When you able to have Yirat Shamayim, you are acquiring your first level of knowing God. Without having Yirat Shamayim, the awe of God, the fear of God, you cannot know God. And it goes hand in hand. Those who don't fear God don't know Him. And they don't know Him, they don't fear Him. They don't fear Him, they don't know Him, guess what? They don't love Him. Interesting enough, the numerical value of the word galut, exile, is 439. 439, it refers to the words Bilam beketz hayamim. Bilam, of course, which gave his prophecy at the end of time. So the galut is a dark stage that we had in which we're supposed to come out of it at the end of time. It also refers to the words Paro cholem. Paro is dreaming, because we know that with the dream of Paro, the exile already, that's how we came about. All the Jews came back to Egypt. And it's also a very interesting numerical value of the words Va'er'eh Pnei Hashem. Even you were Va'er'eh Pnei Hashem, and I would see God's face. In other words, even though you are in galut, in exile, you should be able, and that's really what we're trying to build on here, you need to be able to see God's hand and God's face in that matter. In other words, don't lose hope. Now, as we said before, that we spoke about it last week, and the Ikar Galut, the main form of Galut, is the Galut, the exile of the mind. And we said last week that really whoever needed to know Yosef was not necessarily Paro, but more Am Israel, but they forgot where they came from. We spoke about it last Thursday. They forgot where they came from. They forgot how they got to Mitzrayim. Why did they get to Mitzrayim? And we said that in order to, when the Jews came to Mitzrayim, you need to know, in order to come out, you need to know where you came from. You need to know your entrance, where you came from. So Yosef gave them a certain way, a certain pattern, how to go, but they simply forgot that pattern. And we spoke about the kutonet pasim, the garment of clothing that he had. And basically, he gave them a roadmap of how to go on a track and not to get lost. But they forgot that roadmap. As we explained about the Mesilat Yesharim says that the world is like a maze, that you go in and you go out. Chacham, the wise guy, knows how to go and find himself. He's already in the center because he has the knowledge. Those who don't know try to get shortcuts. But why taking a shortcut if all the paths would already lead you to where you need to go? Why are you going off the path? Stay on the trail. You know this trail is going to get you from point A to point B. Why are you taking a shortcut? Why are you trying to bushwhack some new ways? You're going to get lost. But that's not a chokhmah, that's not wisdom. And we need to understand that. Now, if a person knows where he's going, even in darkness, he would not get lost. Because he knows he is on the path. He knows where the rails are, he knows where the path is. Even in darkness, he will not get lost. Those who are off the path, even in broad daylight, would get lost. And that's something that is very, very important. Now, Am Yisrael has its own roadmap. Am Yisrael has his own path. Am Yisrael is already into his own ways, like Waze, Google Maps. He has a direction of where to really go. And so, what was so difficult in the Galut of Mitzrayim? In a way, we should not have worried about it. What was so difficult about it, or what's so difficult about any exile that we had? Why did not Mitzrayim? Why any exile where it was bad? Why can't we protect ourselves? So we know that when we are in a country that is not ours, and among us are the Goyim, the nations, we can't really protect ourselves. We're always at the mercy of somebody else to protect us. And truth of the matter is that almost all throughout history, Jews were harmed, slaughtered, butchered, and so on and so forth, in any place, even here in America. If you're going to do a search, and you will go and you do the search about the states with the most anti-Semitic groups in the country, you'll be surprised, how many hate groups are there and how many people, are there that really hate us for no reason. Mamash for no reason. So the Sefer HaZohar tells us a different and a beautiful explanation on the essence of what is the Galut. And he says the Shi'abud, oppression, is really a control over one mind, controlling your mind, controlling your spirit, and not necessarily controlling your body. I'm going to tell you one word now: media. Media. Think about what's going on in the media, or what has been going on. Now, in Exile, the Jewish spirit that really is thriving and bubbling inside of all of us is really, and by the way, the Jewish spirit is what gives us the uniqueness that allowed us to be unique and allowed us to maintain and identify our job in the world, is really in a state of weakness. It's a little tired. It's not so awake. Why? Because it's our own spiritual immune system is compromised. And because our spiritual immune system is compromised, any kind of viruses and mutations can really come and affect you to the point that you lose it. It attacks your brain. It attacks your existence all the time. We are on constant attack and bombardment on our own existence. In the way you look, you feel afraid to wear. A Sikh does not have a problem wearing his turban on his head. A Muslim does not have a problem wearing his thing like this. A African woman does not have a problem wearing, robes like this, or an Indian woman wearing a sari. Oh, good for them. A Jew has a problem wearing a kippah, looking like a Jew. We are on constant bombardment about it. And because of that, we always try to compromise that and to try to let go of that. However, and I explained to you this before, that Galut, being an exile, is not necessarily a territorial state of being, but rather a spiritual state of being. In other words, you could be in Israel and be completely in exile. Completely in exile. You want an example? After COVID is going to go out of this world, go take a trip in Tel Aviv. And tell me if you find yourself more Jewish there than you find yourself in Borough Park. So to that matter, being in Borough Park is less exile than being in Tel Aviv. This is ridiculous. Galut is a state of being, a state of mind. And mind is all about that. How connected are you to God? That's why if you wanna be closer to God, not necessarily you have to take an El Al flight and fly yourself to Israel. That's not the case. In order to find God, you gotta look inside the coconut first. Gotta look inside yourself. How much you are connected to God, not to the place, to God. And of course, it's not Zionistically correct as what I just told you, but I don't really care. I don't care about those things. It's just slogans, empty slogans that mean absolutely to no one. And people that move in, because I'm closer to God in Israel. You're not. It's all in your mind. It's all in your mind. So it could be a person who is completely free in his body, but he is really in a prison of negative thoughts. Of course, most of us are in prison of media and social media and so on and so forth. Very few of us have our own opinions that we thought about that are not generated because you listen to this radio station or watch this TV show and so on and so forth. And in a way, it works perfect in America for the two-party system. And that's why most of those matrices don't want you to think, don't want you to be an individual. They don't want you to be free. Your body is free to do whatever you want. In terms of physical freedom, hey, do whatever you want. In terms of mental freedom, most of us are in jail. But negative thoughts is not necessarily just political thoughts. It's negative thoughts altogether. For example, it's all the prison that you put yourself in terms of fears and frustrations that you add. For example, there are many people who could drive, brand new cars, brand new fancy cars that will cost you $80,000, $100,000, and so on and so forth. They live in giant houses, giant mansions, and they have wonderful families, and they're in great health, and yet they are captured within themselves with feelings of frustration, of sadness, and everything that happens to them that does not go according to the plan breaks their spirit. On the other hand, they get upset, they get this. On the other hand, there are people who control their body, right? And they enslave the body also physically, but in terms of mentally, they are free as birds. They're able to think freely and so on and so forth. Yosef HaTzadik was a wonderful example of such a thing. He was in prison, his mind was free. He was at the bottom of all bottoms. He was at the pit, and literally, he was at the pit of the Egyptian jail. And yet, he was able to be smart enough to maintain his own mental freedom. And that's something for us to remember. On the essence of mental exile and emotional exile that we all deal with it on a daily basis, the Zohar says something from the pasuk that we learned on last week's parasha. According to that pasuk, the Bnei Israel worked in the Shi'abud of Mitzrayim, right? And the pasuk says that what was the avodat parach, or the hard labor of the Jews in Egypt? It says avodah kasha, chomer velevenim. Avodah kasha, hard work, chomer, I guess material, velevenim, and bricks. That's the whole galut. So let's see what the Zohar. You want to look what the Zohar says? Okay. Yeah, David, you want to look? So let's look. Avodah kasha, hard work. The Zohar says kasha comes from the word kushiyot, questions. Like the Arba Kushiyot and Pesach have questions. Each one of us has within himself numerous multitude of question marks. For example, why is the world is so difficult? Why don't I have what I want? These are questions we all have. Why is my neighbor more successful than me? Why did he buy a better car than me? Why does it, and so on and so forth. Why doesn't my wife understand me? Why doesn't my husband understand me? Right? Why my kids are not educated? Or why didn't my kids turn up to be the way I wanted them to be? Well, just a parenthesis is very simple, because they are individuals. They have the chance to define themselves whichever way they want to. You wanted kids to be exactly like you, you should have cloned yourself. Well, maybe you shouldn't, but you know what I'm saying. So these are questions that eat us up. Why am I not making so much more money? Why am I'm working so hard and I can hardly finish paying the month. Why, and so on and so forth. Why don't I have any moment of time for myself to enjoy and to relax and so on and so forth? All those question marks make our life miserable. A person becomes miserable when he has all these questions all the time. And those questions that he has, all these doubts that he has in him, really rob you from all the positive powers of creations that are exposed and are assigned to you for your own ability and for your own doing. Because you're dealing with such negativity all the time, and it takes away the joy of creation, the joy of doing things and enjoying. And as a result of that, most people don't feel satisfied with their lives. And if you ask them, they'll tell you. If you ask somebody who's not happy with his life, they'll tell you. You'll see some of these questions, the questions we just spoke about. They don't have a joy in living anymore. And what is fascinating to me, that at a certain point, America was always represented, was the representative of hope in the world. But the more the media got a hold over the lives of the people lost hope of living. And the more hope the people lost, the more control government had over their lives. So you see how it works. And I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I just see it like that. When media was not, when TV was not in everybody's home, people had hope. Even during the Great Depression, people had some hope of making things better. Because people did not have radios in the house, TVs in the house. And now we have telephones, we have bombarded with briefs all the time. Breaking news from this. I don't care, no breaking news. Break your own news. I don't really care about these things. And then all of a sudden comes those politicians and a whole bunch of lies to begin with, both from left and right. I don't believe any one of them. And they'll tell you, guess what? You have no hope. I'm going to be your savior. Politicians substituted the role of religious saviors. Even substituted God, to the point that some of these politicians think that they're God. They are the divine themselves. And that's what my rabbi told me. He said to me, politics is like idol worshiping. You should not get involved with it whatsoever. It's just like that. So, if you don't have any joy of living and so on and so forth, and you don't feel satisfied from your life, you don't want to get up in the morning to work. They feel that they chose their spouse not through wisdom. Especially if they were forced, like somebody did a shotgun wedding to you, put a gun to your head, because you don't have any joy anymore in meeting on living with your spouse. That's why if you haven't yet fulfilled yourself, if you're not feeling content with who you are, you don't feel the joy of life, you have no business getting married. Because you're going to break this marriage. You're going to hate the one you're with. So, if before you're going to go on shidduchim and start dating and going out with girls and so on and so forth, start working on yourself. Start freeing yourself. You can be married when you're in jail. So you need to free yourself before you become married. You're going to hate this person. What this person do wrong? That you're going to hate them. You understand? Does it make sense? Now you want to know why there's so much divorce in the world? That is the reason why. Because if you're going to ask most people that are coming to divorce, why are you getting divorced? When you married one another, did you love one another? You say, yeah, I thought I did. Yeah, no, you actually did, but you lost the joy of life. That's why you're getting divorced. Not because there's anything wrong with the other person or this and that. And there's always extreme cases. There's always extreme cases and so on. And so with some, excuse me, con artist or lunatic that you married, you didn't know, and so on and so forth. But it's because of that. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakol niyah midbaro. Right? When there is the burden of, for example, of bills you have to pay, and you have to pay your mortgage and so on and so forth, the feeling is that you are sinking. The feeling is that you're living in parallel lines to your life, but your life is here and you are there, and where you are going is never going to meet what you call your life. And that's horrible. That's a horrible way to live. And that and there's a feeling that you always miss the most important things, and you don't. The bottom line is you don't feel like living anymore. You say, you know what? I don't mind if I die. I mean, there's no point of me living. What's the point of me living? You're always negative, and you're negative. You don't want to live. So all these doubts, as you could see, they confuse you. First, they confuse you, and when you get confused, then it weakens you. And the source of all these questions that you have, and all these dilemmas that you have, and so on and so forth, is basically lack of emunah. Choser emunah, lack of emunah. You don't believe that there is Ribbono Shel Olam that conducts the world, that everything is done in a precise way and fashion. That it really, Kadosh Baruch Hu, all what God wants is really to do the best for us. But we don't always see that. We don't always internalize it 100% that's what God really wants wants us to do. This understanding that if we would have lived even one moment of life without confusion and frustration,
Lo
shomea. 4 minutes?
It went down quickly for some reason.
Okay, so we can do it in two parts. So therefore, Chazal told us, she'en simcha, there's no joy, only in hatarat sfekot, on undoing doubts. So when a person understands that his life is done according to a master plan, the most correct master plan that is designed for him also, even though that right now he does not understand the plan, if you live with that, you could come down. The mind will come down, and when the mind comes down, you're able to come out from this oppression of the Yetzer Hara. You're able to rejoin joy from the bottom of your heart, and you actually take joy in everything that happens to you. So the first thing you need to do also is simply to relax your mind. So that's going to be part one. Part two will be when we finish charging the batteries, whether it's going to be today or tomorrow. That's a different case. But until then, you have any questions, please, you can feel free to reach us at rabbigaon@gmail.com. Check us on the Yeshiva at yeshiva@etzion.com. Please follow us on Instagram. What else we had? Facebook and YouTube. And please, when you watch it on YouTube, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. I'll see you all down the trail.